Okay, that's working. So here we go. We're going to copy. We're going to paste. All right, so we're just going to throw a quick announcement out there for the MBB team. The team, here is the new link to our currently live consultation. Okay, so we'll send that out to the MBB team, and I believe that everybody's coming in to the new stream. Excellent. Good. So, hi. Good morning, everyone. Finally. Good Lord. There we go. That'll teach me for trying to tweak technology at the last second. I was considering using my got my little GoPro Hero 8 here, and was going to use it as a webcam. As you can see, I've been doing some filming for the Australian government, actually, with my stuff behind me. So I didn't want to set it up for a webcam today. So we're actually filming from my iPhone, and of course, collecting the sound from the computer. So good morning. How are you out there? Lucy, good to see you. Thank you for letting me know, Estefania, that we can now hear. Yomna, thank you. Timna, good morning. Lovely espresso here to start things off. It's been too long. I've been trying to not impinge upon Abby and Katie's limelight, and so have. Good morning, Yuan. Good morning, Vietnam for life. UG, hello. Chathuni, hello there. And so I let them do their thing. But now I'm back from outer space. So Gloria Gaynor said. Hey, Vincent. It's not. It sort of looks like a robe, isn't it? It's actually a very comfortable cardigan. A very, very comfortable cardigan, I must say. I'm feeling very snug in it. I find myself, when I'm doing a lot of work or writing a lot, I seem to regress to very comfortable clothes. You probably would learn something about some experiments around that in social psychology, actually. Developmental psychology, I should say. You might have come across something along these lines. But I have been flat out this week. I finished writing the National Stigma Report Card this week, which was my assignment. You guys have had your lab report, and I had my little assignment to finish this week. My assignment was about where do we end up? I think we've ended up at about 115,000 words. So that was a busy month. Hey, Yuan. Hey, Chathuni, thank you. So, Vincent, let me answer your question. Are you really only comparing the differences between mean scores? Yeah, that's all. That's as far as I'll ask you to go, Vincent. And the reason for this is that whilst you are going to learn how to statistically test differences between mean scores. You're not quite there yet in the sequence of classes in mind, brain, and behavior 2. And so, all I really want you to do is look at the figure and be able to, and you can absolutely report the mean scores and tell me what is more than what, or are they equivalent, or are they different, and in terms of those pre and post mean scores. So that might then raise the question about, well, why didn't we do, the research methods earlier, the t-test and so forth earlier? And it's because I have been teaching stats and clinical at the first year level for over a decade now, and I know that stats is can be very anxiety provoking for many people. And if I was to introduce t-tests into this process, I can guarantee that it would detract from the learning experience, which should be focused on learning how to write a lab report. And so that is really why I've kept the stats simple, so you can learn how to write a lab report. It's a really specific way of writing. It's a fundamental skill in science and in psychology. And if you go on with psychology, you'll get a lot more experience at writing lab reports. This is the first time. This is where you get to trial it for the first time. And, like everything the first time, it's not going to be perfect. I can still remember my first lab report. It was shocking. But here we are. And all I'm asking you to do is, visually interpret those figures, look at the mean scores, determine if they're different or not, and how they're different in your comparison. And in fact, speaking of my first lab report, I can still remember being thrown into doing t-tests in the first lab report and having to learn with no classes actually what a t-test was and how to do it by hand with a calculator, which completely detracted from the experience of learning how to write a lab report in retrospect. So there you go, Vincent. I hope that helps. What's up? Hey, Mish. Thank you, Estefania. It was, good to get that off my plate. So it is a big piece of work. We're currently building the online data explorer that will accompany it, and you guys will all find out more about it on October 12 is when we launch in Mental Health Week. That's when we'll launch the National Stigma Report Card. You'll be able to go and have a look at the website and where are we up to now? Probably realistically about 500 figures, graphs, and tables that we've created for that website in the last month or so. Okay, so good morning, Bridget. Where can we find out information about how to submit on Turnitin? Go to that assignment submission folder on Canvas, Bridget, and all of the instructions are in there. You can submit as much as you like, as many times as you like, up to the deadline. So if you'd like to get a sense of whether or not there are issues with originality in your paper, you can certainly test it in the Turnitin facility. But of course, you'll know yourself whether or not there are issues with originality and paraphrasing and plagiarism in your work because you wrote it. So in the assignment folder, watch my video on academic integrity and plagiarism and paraphrasing, and I sort of outline a way to think about these issues and to evaluate your own work and whether or not there might be an issue. And so go and have a look at that little video, and I think it will be helpful. But having said that, in response to Yuan's question, No, you don't need to do that. You can if you want. So you can just, every time you submit your work, it will overwrite what was there previously and test it fresh on when the final submission will auto submit. Hi, Lucy. In the question in the discussion about what are the benefits of our research, should we use the same citation from the intro that outlined the importance of addressing public stigma? I'm not sure if I'm. So if you're talking about the contributions of your research, is that what we're asking about here? I wonder. Let me just have a look here and see if I can. I'm just going to pull up the marking criteria to see if I can work out what specifically we're asking about here. Oh, okay. So we're talking about the criterion around reflecting on how the study advances scholarship in the field without overstating the importance of the study and its finding. I believe, is that, if that's what you're asking about, Lucy, then this is more about critical thought about what the studies actually contributed. So if you think about, sure, the literature that you reviewed in the field and think about what the study has, what the findings in the study have added to the field, if you were to hypothetically publish this, right, then you might think, well, have we made a contribution maybe in terms of methodology? Have we done some particular methodological innovation that's useful? Have we looked at a certain type of setting, a certain type of sample that's unique in the literature? Or have we advanced our understanding, for example, of how a particular target group might experience stigma and intervention around stigma? Or have we, in fact, also trialed a new type or a unique application of a stigma-based intervention? So you think about what's unique, and whether or not you think the study's findings, again, without overstating them, we've not cured COVID here, for example. Have we made any reductions in stigma? Have we found there's a reduction in stigma through this trial, essentially, of an intervention that we're talking about here? And in making those measured conclusions, I suppose you'd also look at exactly what the baseline of stigma was before, where it was after the intervention, and couch your claims about the benefits of the study or the contributions of the study in those terms in a measured and accurate and contextually appropriate way, rather than saying everybody was incredibly stigmatized beforehand and now we just smashed stigma. There is no more stigma left at all. We've solved the problem. We wouldn't want to say that. That would be a bit grandiose and misleading. So measured, and again, you could think in terms of methodology. And if it is methodology, is it the way that we did it, the sample that we applied it to that's unique in the literature? Was it the nature of the intervention, that sort of thing? Have we made contributions just pragmatically in actually reducing stigma in a group of university students? There's a few different things you could think about here. I hope that was the question you were asking. All right, so let's scroll on down. Hi, Gwen. In my video, I didn't include an overall x-axis label for the graph. Oh, didn't I? Okay. Yes, please. By all means, include one. That would be great. Quick question. What type of scale is the social distance scale? So the social distance scale is a measure of intended behavior. So notice that it's not a measure of actual behavior, which is one of the biggest controversies around the measurement of social distance in so much stigma research. And that controversy is that what we're doing is testing hypothetical behavior that we think may occur, not behavior that actually does occur in real life per se. And would one's level of intended social distance based on the social distance scale actually translate to a corresponding behavioral manifestation? Would your behavior equal what you say on the scale, essentially? It's a big controversy. So it's a measure of intended behavior. That's what we're getting at there. And it's the dependent variable, right? So the measures on the social distance scale are the dependent variable. That's where we're measuring intended social distance around people with mental health issues. So the dependent variable, the thing that's being affected or the thing that we are hypothesizing was going to change as a result of the mind-brain behavior 2 clinical course intervention, that's the dependent variable, that social distance, and measured by the social distance scale. The independent variable is the intervention. It's the thing that we are manipulating. Wow, look at all these questions. My goodness. Goodness me. Hi, Chu-ha. Yes. G'day, Dr. Chris. I don't often get a g'day. Thank you very much for the g'day. G'day right back to you, Chu-ha. I've lost my g'day. I used to have a good g'day, and now it sounds like a very posh g'day. G'day. G'day, mate. Chu-ha, yes, you could say that participants were Australian and international students. Sure. At the University of Melbourne, that makes sense, doesn't it? Timna, hi. When discussing our method and talking about education, can we say the lectures by Dr. Chris Groot about symptoms, treatments, and so forth? Yes, yep, that's all part of the package that we're theorizing comprises this packaged intervention, this contact and education hybrid intervention. Hannah, hi there. Should we talk about the limitations or differences in studies we're referencing in the introduction or the discussion? For example, if they used a different scale. So certainly, yes, you may wish to draw out those differences. And note that a different scale isn't necessarily a limitation. It just might, for example, explain if you do find in our study that you've come up with a different result to a previous study, and that study did use different measures, then maybe there's something about the difference in the measures that we used across the two studies that might explain the results. That's good to see you thinking critically about this and corresponding measures across studies and how comparable results may be, findings may be. That's really impressive, Hannah. Good to see you thinking about that. if you were mentioning the measures in your introduction, I'd mention them just very briefly. Not necessarily are they a point of discussion that's necessary in the introduction. In this instance, in their own right, but certainly you could measure them just very briefly. Very briefly, they found X in this type of sample using this type of measure. That would be suffice. That would suffice. And then in your discussion, if you find that there's a point of difference between the literature you cited and what you've found, then sure, one thing to think about would be methodology. Hi, Charlotte. So, how closely do you need to compare your study to previous studies? I would say not too closely at all, given that you've got a very tight word limit. You've only got 1,500 words. And that's not a lot of words at all. So, you don't have a lot of room. I would suggest that you go down a more detailed route of comparison if you find divergent findings in your discussion is where you talk about that. Okay, so hi, Paul. Can the study be regarded as longitudinal? Not really. This isn't really what you'd think about as a longitudinal study. Longitudinal studies have typically got more of an ongoing flavor to them. So I mentioned the National Stigma Report Card study, and we've measured people's stigma now, and of the 1,912 people that we retained for analysis, most of those people are forming what we'll call a cohort, and we're going to track their experiences of stigma across life over many years and repeatedly. And so that would be more a case of a longitudinal design. Hi, oh my God, I'm having a stroke. What is going on here? Tekiaya. No. Tekiaya. Yes. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. In the literature review, are we required to mention all of the sources we've used in the report? Are we able to provide to integrate sources that were not provided in the readings online? Oh, by all means, yes, please go beyond the starting readings. That's absolutely encouraged. Yes. In your reference list, you would only list the previous works that you have actually cited in your paper. So not necessarily all of the ones that you actually consulted. So it's not a bibliography. The reference list is a list specifically of the items that you cited in your paper. Tekiaya. I'm sorry. Gosh, dearie me. Do we need to include the Likert scale? You could certainly, yes, describe the Likert scale. Oh, hang on, wait. Yes, that would be good. You could describe that. That would be excellent. Okay. Hey, Kath, you don't have to access, turn it in before submitting. Only if you want to. Jack, you don't necessarily need to limit your title to 12 words or less. I know that's a common approach. Just keeping it concise is the aim. Hey, Paul. Yes, this session was originally scheduled for 10. I had to bring it forward to 9:30, so you're not late. I had to bring it forward to 9:30 because I am working on something that you'll all be pretty interested in, I think. I'm meeting with the CEO of an organization at 10:30, who is going to, this organization is going to work with us to build something even bigger out of the Hearing Voices program and give many more students who are interested opportunities to get involved with some more mental health and well-being related activities and projects and so forth in their undergraduate experience. So yeah, that is the reason for the reschedule. All about the Hearing Voices program, believe it or not. We continue to build it. Hey, Sarah, that's a really interesting idea. So Sarah asks here, is it important to say that the intervention was online? So that is it's a really interesting application of the intervention this year. So indeed, you've effectively trialed here during the COVID intervention an online hybrid. God damn it, if I thought of this beforehand, you've actually raised something here, Sarah, that I've not thought of just because I've been so busy with other things. If I'd thought about this, I would have done this for real. But we've done a COVID era online intervention, contact and educational intervention for mental illness stigma here. So sure, you could absolutely mention that. Great idea. Yeah, excellent. By all means. For all questions about the word count and what's in and what's out, I'll refer you all to the policy, and the policy is found in the years 1 to 3 or grad dip student manuals that are available on Canvas. That has got the precise policy very clearly laid out there about the word count. So be sure to check that out. Estefania, I wanted to know where is the best place to detail the interventions, because the sample essays do this in the aim, but not in the procedure of the design section. You could briefly mention this in the aim, but then you would describe it in more detail in the methods section. That's correct. That's the way you would do it. Yes, Hanui, there is the mistake in the video of the 1,850 people. Of course, it's 1,859 because of the hetero, isn't it? That's right. So there was 1,149 people, not 1,859. Good Lord. 1,149. That's right. Yeah. Do we mention the sample of the studies we discuss in the literature review? Yeah, that's a good question, Marta. I tend to like that. It can be done very briefly. So you could very simply say in a sample of university students or whatever the previous samples were in a general population sample or something like that. I think it's always really good for your readers to have that fundamental information that they can bring to bear in their consideration of the findings that you're using as evidence to support your argument that's leading towards your hypotheses. That level of transparency allows the reader, I suppose, just to sense check your logic and your evidence. And it's a good way, actually, I think, when you've done that in a really solid way to start to, get your reader to come along on the journey and invest in the journey as well. When you can demonstrate that your logic is sound and the research that you've provided as support leading to your hypotheses is appropriate. Hey, Rima. So Rima asks, is it okay to abbreviate the social distance scale into SDS? Yes, that would be fine. That would be fine. Generally, look out for abbreviations in scientific writing. I hate them personally. It's just, I think it really breaks flow, particularly when there's numerous things that are abbreviated. So you've had the luxury here of dealing with one measure, but sometimes people, or most often people, will use many, many measures that have all been combined into one study, and the abbreviations can get out of control. I definitely recommend, where possible, trying to avoid abbreviations. Hey, Annabelle. Yeah, there's ways that you can statistically compare different studies in terms of change. We aren't applying the statistics this time around, but you raise a really interesting observation and one that I had as well. And so maybe we will build into one of the upcoming research methods practical classes a little bit of a discussion about how to do that statistically in the future. For just now, you could talk in terms of the trends that you've observed, and that would be fine. Hi. 8282. It's a little bit like that Siri joke. Have you seen those Siri videos or general AI assistant videos getting around where people will ask them to call them by the name and then type in or say AH, and so forth? Try it with your Siri and see what happens. It's quite funny. In a literature review, can you explain the premises and how to relate our literature to them? Well, in a way, your premises will sort of come out of the literature as well. So I think one of the things that you would probably be seeking to draw out of the literature in your argument would be the value of educational interventions, the value of contact-based interventions, in reducing desire for social distance and reducing stigma. So your what was your question exactly? How to relate the literature to them. So really, you will find that as you not only write this lab report, but you go on to write other lab reports, a lot of the time, your various premises or parts of your argument that you're putting forward will come out of your reading of literature. This is a very empirical literature-driven lab report. In due course, you'll also start to apply a strong theoretical aspect and foundation to your work more and more when you're doing bigger pieces of work, and your premises will be both based upon your theoretical approach, which they are here, it should be here as well as the literature. But the emphasis on theory will become bigger and bigger as time goes on, and you start working on media lab reports and so forth. If you're a little bit unsure about this, I'd recommend having a look, and I'm just trying to remember which module it was from first semester. It could be the first or even the second research methods module, where we talk about, now actually there's a couple here. There's the first or second modules where we talk about deriving hypotheses from research questions, and also the critical thinking module, which I believe is module number 11 from Mind, Brain, and Behavior 1, even though these aren't examinable resources for this semester, they are useful, I think, in this instance. Hi, Clarissa. Is it okay for me to go up to 1,559 words? I don't know. What do we reckon, everyone? That would be within the parameters of the word count policy. So from that perspective, it's fine. Quite often in the future, in real life, you're going to be given a strict word count that you must write to. You will not be able to go one word over. So from a professional development point of view, so if you actually think about the opportunity that you have right now is to acquire a range of fundamental skills, and one of them is working to a word count, which has always been malleable throughout your educational history. I get that. But when you get out in the working world, if you're writing for a particular, there might be a report style that you need to adhere to. There might be a journal article guide that you need to adhere to. There might be a funding application that you are submitting. And each of these things will very commonly have a strict word count, can't go a word over. So I would treat this as an opportunity to start rehearsing those skills and see if you can fit what you need to say in 1,500 words. Hi, Mira. So good question. Is participation considered voluntary since we're all automatically enrolled to participate? Well, you were all, so you're all automatically enrolled in the subject, and the intervention was part of the subject, but volunteering data in the project and submitting data and effectively being a participant in the study that you're reporting in your lab report, that was optional. So I asked people to do that if they would, and as we can see, not everybody did. So it was optional. I'm not going to come around with a wooden spoon and chase the people who didn't. So I hope that helps. Should the literature review include research that contradicts your hypothesis, or should all studies used lead towards your main argument or hypothesis? Sarah, I would, for the purposes of the introduction, look at literature that would lead towards your hypothesis. I think it'd be very difficult anyway to find literature that was leading away from your hypothesis in this instance. But the whole idea of the argument you're building is one that leads towards the prediction that underpins your study, and it's the one you're going to test. Now, of course, we're playing sort of make-believe researcher, aren't we, in undergrad psych, throughout undergrad psych for a lot of the time, because we're being handed pre-prepared studies. But in the future, when you use the skills that you're learning right now and you're acquiring right now, and the knowledge that you're acquiring right now, and you go out into the world and you do a real research project, you're going to come up with that research project from your mind based on the knowledge and skills that you've acquired and the things that you're reading. And so in doing so, that literature is going to lead the process a lot more. The theory that you're bringing to bear, the empirical findings that you're bringing to bear, to create an argument that would form a rationale for a hypothesis. This is all going to be, it's going to feel more fitting and more like a process. I think that's the word I'm looking for. It's more of an authentic process when you're out there and you're doing this for real. I get how it feels clunky. Hi, Rach. As Daniel says, no. So Rach asks about whether or not we need a abstract. And no, you don't need an abstract. Gal, you could certainly describe how scores were summed. That would be great. Yes, you do elaborate and explain how you went about your study in the methods section. SC, you would only very briefly mention this around aims in the introduction. The method is where you want to lay out the recipe. The point of the method is that you provide enough information about your study to enable somebody else, a reader who is also a researcher, to go, this is really interesting. Let's replicate this and see if we come up with the same effect. Or let's replicate it and add an extra bit on, replicate and extend. And so the method is where you lay out that recipe about who was in the sample, what you used, what the tools were, how you went about doing things, and so forth. Hi, Mimi. Do I suggest to put the word hybrid in the title? Not necessarily. So stick to 1500, Paul says. I have a feeling that Paul already has some experience in sticking to word limits. Melissa, you like my knit? Why, thank you so much. Janice asks, in the discussion section, can we talk about the statistical numerical differences, the stigma reduction between our study and others? Yeah, absolutely. If you raise them in the introduction, yeah, definitely. So you want to talk about any discrepancies and demonstrate then that you can think critically about why those discrepancies might have occurred. And if you do so, I think that's a really great way to demonstrate your scholarship and your critical thinking. So that's a great question, Janice. Well done. Hi, Sarah. Yeah, if you are asking that question about how much detail you need to include around studies in the literature review on conditions, methods, and results, and so forth, and you're finding your introduction is long, I would suggest that is that is probably the actual place you want to cut things down. You can summarize a study in a sentence, very briefly. If it's a standout study that really matches what we're doing here, and you really want to flesh it out more, then yeah, by all means, go to town. But depending on how much literature you've added, and well, this actually is the case regardless of how much literature you've added. It's about finding that sweet spot with the space that you've got available in your introduction literature review section, which isn't much. What is the balance between the breadth of the literature that you're looking at and the depth of the review that you're providing? That's going to take practice. And, really, in terms of marks and your future, this lab report means diddly squat. If you want to get into honors or a PhD or a master's program, or you want to open your own business, or you want to, I don't know, have children and move to the country, I'm trying to give a range of possible life outcomes here. This lab report means very little in terms of its implications for any of those things other than learning how to write a lab report. So what's more important than the mark for this lab report? I would say it's the feedback that you can think about and bring to bear in lab reports next year when you start to write again. Feedback you get around the detail of the literature review that you've created here is more important than anything else. So it's going to be a process of learning and of rehearsal over time. And I hope that helps in a vague sort of way. Hey, Lauren, do you define and elaborate on the social distance scale in where would you do that? You do that in the methods section. In the methods section is where you do that. Hey, Mimi, can you use the same research papers from the sample in our literature review? Use the same research papers from the sample in our literature review. I'm not quite sure what you are asking here. Oh, yes, we're still going to do. Yes, we're still going to do a movie night. Yuan, I'm working on something. Yeah, a movie night would be cool. Any movie night would be cool, right? But I've got something on the boil, so just watch this space. Watch this space, I will say. Yeah, Lauren is sort of on the right track, but we'll see if we can do one better than just the movie, shall we say. So the social distance scale, Siranjana, I would suggest that you could mention that in the introduction around it being, probably the most common measure of stigma from a behavioral perspective in the literature. It certainly is. And from an intended behavior perspective, the social distance scale is the go-to scale, has been for a long time. So yeah, you could introduce that when you talk about methodology in the field, for sure. Oh dear. Yeah, Leave it with me. Leave it with me. We'll see. I'm onto something about the movie. All right. So I think we've probably answered all of the questions. So my biggest advice for you at this point, of course, is not to leave submission until the last second. Don't leave things up to technology to mess up. It can mess up at the last second. Give yourself some time to get this submitted safely. Don't wait till 7:55 on Monday morning. That would not be good. And if you're done, then submit it. Be done with it. Get it off your plate. Feel that relief and have a nice weekend and move on. All right, 2 quick questions then at the end here. Sarah, I'm a bit confused about how to reference methodology-related imitations as they are specific to this study. So yeah, when so Sarah, are you asking about the limitations section of the discussion? If that's what you're asking about, then the limitations that you would discuss would be specific to the study. That's all you're going to talk about. If you want to talk about the limitations of previous studies, so you might, open up a gap between what previous studies did and what this study is going to do, for example, or did. You would probably do that very briefly in your introduction. You don't really have a lot of space to be doing, a lot of methodological critique around previous studies. Does the notes section below the figure count as part of the word count, or is this considered a caption? Oh, goodness me. I honestly cannot remember off the top of my head. I'm going to refer you to the word count policy on this one again. Should we be talking about labeling in the report, as in labeling of mental illnesses? Not necessarily. You could, but you'd have to think about whether or not that's relevant to what you've studied, as in to what you've investigated here specifically. I would define social distance in the introduction and mention the social distance scale as a common measure, perhaps, but then I'd really get into the explanation of what the scale was in the method section. There were no exclusion criteria. If people got into mind, brain, and behavior 2, they were invited to participate to this in this study. So this was nice. I'm running out of time, but this was nice to catch up and talk with you all. Yes, there is a movie night coming. I am on that. And yes, there are potentially some other things coming as well. But I think after we've submitted the lab report on Monday. Oh, speaking of submission, if you need an extension, there is a way to do this. So it's not emailing me and it's not emailing your tutors. We can't give out extensions that way. We have to go through a formal process. And you can ask for an extension. You can still ask for an extension this weekend, but you won't hear back. More than likely it will be fine, but you won't hear back until it's processed, and it doesn't get processed by me. It gets processed by staff in the School of Psychology centrally. So you need to go to the extensions module on the LMS and apply through there. That's the way to do that if you want. So now that we've all settled, maybe we'll start to have some weekly catch-ups again. I think that would be good, and we can start to discuss what's coming for the end of the semester. And in doing so, I'm just going to be really mindful not to step on the toes of the various lecturers who are teaching. So Katie's teaching at the moment, of course. and I won't be answering questions about their content. Certainly talk about clinical and research methods and just the overall mind-brain behavior 2 journey and examination more generally, I think. So, all right. I have to join a Zoom in 2 minutes, so I'm going to sign off. Thank you so much for joining in, everyone. All the very best and good luck for your lab report. Don't stress out about this too much. It's not worth it. It's just a lab report. All right. Thank you all for your efforts, by the way, as well. I appreciate how much effort you're putting in, and it comes through in these questions, so it's great to see. Good on you, everyone. Take care, and I will see you soon. Okay. Bye now.